Many people, when they attempt to start their journey in learning about Islam, they tend to start picking and choosing, and they start reading this book and reading that article and going to this website and jumping around in a way that is not very beneficial and in a way that's actually very confusing. So after many years of attempting to learn something, they come out with an incohesive understanding about Islam and about the world in general. So what I'm going to show you today is just something that will help you kind of locate which part of the knowledge that you're tapping into. So whenever you pick a book and you start reading it, at least you would know, well, what am I reading? Where does this fit in the big puzzle of the sciences from an Islamic perspective? So let me share my screen here with you, and I'll walk you through some of the stuff right now. So I'll share a portion of the screen right here. Okay, so here what I'm showing you right now is what I call the knowledge roadmap, خارطة الطريق or خارطة العلوم. And what, from an Islamic perspective, what it means to look at the sciences. So from an Islamic perspective, there are two sources for knowledge. The first one is a divine revelation. So right here in the middle of this green circle, divine revelation. The second source of knowledge is the universe. So the divine revelation are things that we are not able to observe. These things have to come from the divine. They can also things that be things that we are able to observe, but the divine decided to send it to us through one of the prophets or the messengers as something to say, okay, well, here's something that's in the universe that's going to help you. It might take you a long time to figure it out, but here it is. This is for you. The other source of knowledge is the universe. And some scholars, they call it the al-wahy al-manshur, or what's called the observed revelation, because from an Islamic perspective, this universe is a is an entity that we have to work with and we have to deal with and derive knowledge from and take care of. Now, from these two, there are four categories of sciences that branch off. The first one are the social sciences, like humanities, politics, etc., etc. There are the natural sciences. This is like math, physics, science, chemistry, blah blah blah. There are the linguistic sciences, like linguistics, and there are the Sharia sciences or the religious sciences. Now, any sort of subject that you attempt to study from an Islamic perspective, it'll fit in one of these four circles. And the source of it will be either a divine revelation or will be the universe. For example, if you're trying to study, say, Maxwell's equations, where, well, that belongs to something that is related to electrical engineering. Electrical engineering is a natural science, and hence it fits in the circle, and it is derived from observing the universe, for example. Now, another example is, let's say, for example, you're trying to study the Quran, the religious book of Islam. That'll be coming from the religious sciences. Under the studies of the Quran, there are many sciences, including the exegesis, the revelation, etc., etc., etc. So it'll fit all under the Sharia sciences, and the Sharia sciences, specifically the Quran, will come from divine revelation. So what I'm going to do is that now I'm going to take the Sharia sciences, the religious sciences, I'm going to expand them. So I'll expand them into this diagram right here. The Sharia sciences, they have three branches under them. There are the fundamentals, there are the tools, and there are the sources. So the fundamentals, these deal with aqidah, which is belief, fiqh, which is jurisprudence, and tazkiyah, which is spirituality. Under the tools are basically they're almost bridges that allow you to dig deep and understand the religious sciences even deeper, and be able to derive rulings from the what's called the sources, the primary sources right here. So for example, if I understand literature, if I understand morphology and grammar and logic, I'm able to go to the sources, which are the Quran, the religious book for the Muslims, and the Hadith, which is the prophetic tradition, and derive from it new rulings that pertain to our religious studies and religious lives. And then under the sources, as I said, there is the Quran and there is the Hadith. Now, when a person starts their journey with Islam, they have to cover the fundamentals. These fundamentals right here, and this is where people get lost. Well, what do I cover? I'm going to show you quickly right now um, a basic curriculum that I have personally put together over the past 2 years, and I have delivered it. It's just important for you to know about. Well, if I'm going to dive into this, how do I dive into it? Like, what does it mean to study the fundamentals? Because each of these topics is massive, and you can get lost in there if you don't have a roadmap. So I'm going to show you this document right here. And this is basically the outline of the course that I have developed, basically a curriculum. The way I start with the people is that if somebody wants to learn about Islam, if they newly accepted the religion, or if they're deciding to become more religious, it's important to put that in perspective, put the objective in perspective, as well as the intention of that individual. And then from there, we start from the beginning, the story of humanity and the story of Islam. Where did we come from? Where did our souls come from? What is the history of creation? Who are Adam and Eve? Who are the messengers and the prophet? Who is Muhammad, peace be upon him? And why is Arabic an essential aspect of the faith, of the Islamic faith? Then from there, we dive into the dimensions of the faith. There are three dimensions of the faith. There is the Islam, which is the jurisprudence, the physical rituals. There's the Iman, which is the belief, and that deals with the intellect. And there's Ihsan, which deals with the spirituality and the heart. Now, the hour is very important because that talks about the hereafter. And the hereafter is the reason that we're doing anything that we're doing in this world. We want to make sure that we arrived to meet God in the best shape and form that we can be. Now, if we take Iman, which is the second branch here, which deals with the belief, there are 6 articles of faith. There is, and these are God, believing in God, the angels, the scriptures, the messengers, the last day, and the destination or predestination or fate or decree. These aspects, each one of these 6 articles, you can go in depth in them. But for somebody who is a new Muslim or somebody who is starting to become religious, there are a few things that are important to know so that you're not in the dark. So this is where this curriculum summarizes it well. And then after that, we go into Islam, or the rituals or the worship. And from here, we dive into the 5 pillars of Islam. So we talk about what it means to be accountable, morally accountable. What does it mean to follow a school of thought? What are the legal rulings in Islam? So these things are important for the individual to know, because if they don't know them and they start reading books randomly about worship, they're going to get lost. Well, what does it mean when something is permissible? What does it mean when something is disliked? What does it mean when something is commendable or liked or mustahab? So it's very important to define these terms before they dive deep into it. Then we look at something that is from a 10,000 feet bird eye view, the objectives of the sacred law. I'm studying the sacred law here, the Islamic law. Why is it important? Why are the religious sciences important? Why is there something called Sharia law? What's the objective of that? And then we dive into that just a little bit in depth so that you're aware of the big picture. And then we dive into right now the rituals. These are hard rituals, like the prayer. What does it mean to pray? How do you pray? How do you perform the ablution? How do you perform the washing, the purification? All these things, we just dive into it. And the prayer is one of the biggest chapter because it's one of the most essential aspects of the faith. Then from there, we dive into the purifying alms or the zakah or the obligatory charity. We speak about what it means to pay the zakah. And what are the types of zakah, like, the charity on stocks, the charity on loans, and who are the recipients of this zakah. And then we give a little bit of the spirituality of zakah, because a lot of people, when they deal with the zakah, they deal with it as just a financial, physical transaction. No, zakah has a very deep spiritual meaning to it. So we dive deep into that. Then we look at fasting. This is the fasting of Ramadan or Psalm. well, what does it mean to fast? How do we fast? How do we determine that Ramadan started? How do we determine that Ramadan ended? And all these topics. And then we end also with some dimensions of fasting, because a lot of people, they look at fasting as just a physical activity that is, physically challenging. No, 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 no. Fasting has a lot of inner dimensions that are important to look into. Then we look at pilgrimage, the Hajj, which is the fifth pillar of Islam. If I'm going to go to Mecca and perform pilgrimage, how do I do that? A lot of Muslims and non-Muslims, they have no idea what Hajj is. So we summarize it very quickly. We define things that are very important for the individual to know, especially in our modern world. Like if you're traveling to Mecca, what does it mean to go into a state of inviolability, and how do you do that when you're in an airplane? So this is important to talk about. And then this basically summarizes the second branch of the faith, which is the rituals, the jurisprudence. And then finally, we end up with the final branch, which is the ihsan, or the tazkiyah, or the spirituality. We talk a little bit about what is the essence of our soul. What does it mean to have that intrinsic primary nature? What are the destructive vices? What are the saving virtues? What's the reality of this world that we're living in from an Islamic perspective? And then we end with a very practical approach to spirituality, so that the person doesn't get lost. They don't get lost in the different tariqas, in the different the spiritual paths and the journeys. And there are a lot of things that are out there that will get you so lost. You will be yeah, I'm not gonna continue in this topic, but anyhow, so yeah, that's why this stuff is important. When you come to study Islam, it's important for you to be able to follow a knowledge roadmap, and it's important for you as well to know, well, what are you studying and where does that fit in the puzzle. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next episode, and assalamu alaikum.